Violence has erupted once again across the UK from Hull, Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Blackpool and Belfast as demonstrations have turned violent once again. More than 90 people have been arrested as injured police officers are treated for broken bones. Late last night, ministers were locked in talks with the judiciary to make courts sit for 24 hours to, just been talking about this, to fast-track sentencing. The Prime Minister telling police they have ministers' full backing to take all necessary action to keep our streets safe from thugs who sow hate. Prime Minister's words, not mine. Joining me is GB News reporter Adam Cherry, who I believe is outside the Home Office for us. Adam, look, everyone's saying, what's happening? Why are we not seeing anything? Why are we ones suffering out? Our streets are being burned down. We're all being branded far right. And all we're hearing is words. We're not getting any proper action from the government.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is some action being taken, as you described and as was said in the bulletins. It's over this 24-hour court process. So they'll activate what's known as the additional courts protocol, which means that they sit for 24 hours to deal with the volume of cases flying into custody. Whether that's enough, we'll see. I mean, it did work in 2011 when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. This was part of the deal that was discussed yesterday, was activating this protocol. And then it worked, but, you know, the question is this going to be enough long term? Obviously, a short-term solution is necessary, but the comments speak to the deeper problem, and perhaps there'll be a necessary conversation later on, further down the line, about why these protests are so violent and why this tension is simmering. But I'd say that's a discussion perhaps for another day. For now, the priority is getting the violence down. And we'll just have to wait and see whether that works. So, of course, Keir Starmer himself facing some difficulty in the next few days because he is reportedly going on holiday at some point in the next week. Downing Street pushing back somewhat, saying that he will not be jetting off on Monday, although that's not actually what the initial story was in the first place. If you read the Times piece, Times say he was going to fly away next week, or rather in a week's time. So a bit of spin there, but we'll see how that goes. Robert Jenrick, the Tory leadership contender, saying whilst Britain burns, it's not a good idea for the Prime Minister to shoot off. So perhaps he'll have to get a refund on his plane tickets, Dawn.
Indeed, not a good idea. Yeah, I think they should all get back. I mean, why should they go on holiday when we're all putting up with this? Thank you very much. That's Adam Cherry there. Now, I want to look at a different angle on this, because this is an angle I thought of when I was looking at the pictures from the riots overnight. So joining me now is psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Lucy, hello, lovely. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, you know, we're all talking until we're blue in the face about, you know, why people are so angry, why we're rioting. But what I want to do from you is understand the psychology of a riot, the psychology of rioting. Now, obviously, basically, people are angry, but what makes some people turn it into the violence we have seen?
Well, I think what we're looking at is a very complicated picture, but also one that's very simple in human psychological terms. When we are frightened, when we are scared, we will often lash out. People have heard, I'm sure, of the flight or the fight response. And if you are on your own, the chances are you might run away. But if you know that there is a group around you, if you can imagine, you know, the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you, there's a real threat, and you've got your tribe around you, then you're going to feel much more confident about facing that threat. So what we had 6 days ago was a really traumatic incident, a tragedy where 3 small girls were murdered. And that has made people feel very unsafe and very vulnerable. And very quickly, what you see is that people find that they are not alone in those feelings. They want to express those feelings, and they start to go out onto the street. And the more that you see people going out onto the street, the more inclined you might be to go out on the street as well. We're very imitative creatures, human beings. We tend to learn about the world by copying other people. And so with social media in the mix, amplifying the stories and spreading the images of people going out and causing trouble or having a really powerful, emotional, angry response. There is something very primitive about human beings, and they will respond to that and follow suit.
So, Lucy, basically, it is no one's condoning this behaviour. It's appalling, it's shocking, it's criminal, and people are suffering. People are losing their businesses. Police are being attacked and having, bones broken. So no one's condoning it, but it is basically what you're trying to say is like it's human nature, it's tribal.
What I'm saying is that it's very understandable. I think you're very right to not condone it, because there have been all sorts of incidents, whether, as you say, it's broken bones, people attacking the police, people attacking mosques, attacking shops, looting, that actually there's been real offensive criminal behaviour. But from a psychological point of view, it's incredibly understandable because people are very afraid. And the two words that keep coming up a lot, and they've come up a lot, they came up a lot in the election, and they've come up a lot with this particular episode, is a lack of trust and fairness. And people feel very unheard. They feel like the people in power are not listening to them. And they also feel that if they're listening, they're only listening to certain segments of society. And if there's another thing that human beings are very, very alert for, it's fairness. From a very early age, you're very attuned to whether you're getting your parental attention or maybe your sibling is getting a bit more than you, who in the classroom is getting more favoritism from the teacher than you are. We're very, very alert because it's a survival mechanism. And so if you can look at it through that lens, you don't condone it, but you can at least understand it. Because if you can understand it, you can start to address the root causes.
Lucy, as always, incredibly fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much. That's Lucy Beresford, psychotherapist. Thank you so much for doing. So basically, the political point of it, the people are angry, they don't understand, they feel like they're not being listened to. We are hearing that constantly from news out there, and loads of people are saying the same thing. The Westminster bubble isn't listening to me. I'm not far right, but I am worried. Lucy's just said psychologically, that is what's going on as well. So it's not just political. What do you make of what you've just heard, Amy?
I found that quite difficult to listen to, actually, because Lucy said it's completely understandable and that people think
from a psychological point of view, not from a political or a criminal point of view.
But this, to me, is a complete demonstration of what happens when you scapegoat migrants for everything in society over the last 14 years. And this is the chickens coming home to roost. People think they can't get housing because of migrants. They think that they can't get healthcare because of migrants. They think all of society's ills and all the unfairness that they experience in their life are because of immigration. Immigration has contributed to their lives. Immigration is propping up, construction is propping up the healthcare system. Without immigration, people would be far, far, far worse off. But because of the way our media works, because of the way certain politicians work, to be able to blame everything that's going wrong for this portion of society that are upset on migration, well, that's great, isn't it? Because then it's not their fault. So they can shift the blame to the migrant community for government's failings.
I'm just going to read this one quick message. No, it's not a message. It was someone who's been interviewed in the paper. John Crook, 62, a plasterer, travelled from Bradford to Liverpool for the rally to protest, not to riot. He believes the government is not listening to people like him who are not racist or far right, but have concerns about immigration. And this is going back, it's just not recent immigration as well. I grew up in an area of Bradford which these days is like a no-go area and nobody wants to admit it. 40 years ago, my mum would clean the stone steps of the house and would go to church. Now you can't walk those streets. Mike, does that sound like a far-right racist to you or an ordinary concerned citizen, echoing the gut feelings that Lucy Beresford was just talking about?
Well, a concerned citizen, and I think there's millions of them. I agree with one thing Amy has said, not with a lot of what she said, but when she said Lucy described it as completely understandable, I don't think it's completely understandable to witness the sort of behaviour we've had. Lucy, I'm sure, is a very highly qualified psychologist, right? No doubt about that.
Psychotherapist.
He's psychotherapist, but I didn't see her once mention thuggery. A lot of people just pile in on these sort of demonstrations just because they want to become a thug for the night and then get away with it. You get away with it because there's more rioters than there are police, so you haven't got much chance, really, of being lifted, you know? I know 90 people have been lifted and arrested, but that's out of hundreds, if not thousands, who've been rioting. So a lot of it is about thuggery. A lot of it is about taking advantage of the situation because you have now suddenly got it over the law and order authorities in this country. So get stuck in there. If at the back of your mind there is, you know, a bit of an anguish you've got about you think that your local community, say in Hare Hills and Leeds, has been completely taken over by people who've come to this country and they've diluted the indigenous population of where you grew up, then, you know, we know in this country we're one of the most tolerant in the world. You should take that to your local MP, take it to your local council, but they haven't got time to do that. The shortest route is to get involved in a riot that somebody else started and express your frustration like that, and it's something we've got to keep an eye on.
To say that's an appropriate emotional response or an emotional response that is completely understandable is akin to justifying domestic violence by being like, well, you know, she really wound him up, so, you know, you can understand why. There is no understanding of what we've seen over the last 2 days.